Hello, my name is Danielle Laverty, and I'm doing video blog number one on watching a police movie and picking out three scenes where the police acted in a constitutional or unconstitutional manner. So I chose to watch The Thin Blue Line. It was a documentary, and there was a lot of information, so I had to watch it a few times to fully grasp the whole scenario of the movie. So, to start, the main character was Randall Adams, and he was found guilty by jury of the killing of a police officer in Texas in 1976. So it kind of started out with the interviews, and the one of the detectives said that we have never had such a long time frame of an officer being shot and a suspect not being brought into custody. And it was a little under a month of this crime being open before they had somebody in custody, or the person who did it, so they thought. The shooting took place November 29th, and December 21st of that year, they took Randall Adams into custody. And the first scene I felt that was unconstitutional was when the detective who was interviewing Adams wanted him to sign a voluntary statement of committing the crime. And Adams said, "No, I didn't do it. I'm not going to sign it. No." And then the detective went on to bring out a pistol and put it on the table and said, "Well, will you pick up this pistol and look at it?" And I'm not completely sure if he was trying to get fingerprints on the pistol, if it was the murder weapon, or what they were trying to do with that. But Adams said, "No, I had nothing to do with this. I'm not picking it up. No." Adams said that he was not able to make a phone call during that interview. Oh, let me back up a little bit. So after he refused to pick up the gun, the detective was getting frustrated and pulled out his own service weapon and pointed it at Adams from across the table and said, "You're going to sign this statement or else," pretty much insinuating you're going to get shot. Adams just stared at him and said, "No, I didn't do it." And that's when the detective picked up his paper with the statement on it with no signature and put his gun away and walked out of the interrogation room. So in our textbook on page 85, it says that rights governing interrogations and confessions, that use of physical force is prohibited. And in my opinion, pulling out a gun or a weapon of any sort during an interrogation is considered use of physical force. So I found that to be unconstitutionally correct, and the detective did not act in the correct manner. So the second scene that was found to be unconstitutional, in my opinion, was when the suspect, being Adams, when he was taken into custody and interrogated, he was not read his Miranda rights. Now, there's two different ways to view it, and looking through the textbook, I had to read it a couple times. It says that there's an interrogation tactic used by law enforcement. The officer will question the suspect without advising him of his rights, and if the suspect freely gives up information that without being read his rights, it can't be used in court, but then he'll be taken into custody and they'll talk further more of what the suspect originally said. But prior to interrogating him for the second time, they'll have to read him his Miranda rights for it to be admissible in court. So nowhere in the scene where Adams was being interrogated was he read any of his rights. And Adams went on to say that he was not allowed to make a phone call and so obviously he was not allowed to contact an attorney. So that right there is the second example of a unconstitutional act done by the detective. The third one was after Adams was found guilty by the jury of committing this murder, which he did not do. He was taken back to a holding cell and was questioned by a doctor who was notoriously known as being called Dr. Death because 99% of his clients that he interviewed were sentenced to death. And knowing Texas and their execution rate, that's pretty high. So the doctor's name was Dr. James Grigson, and he worked for the prosecution, for one. And as I said, he was known to have a high rate of being given the death sentence. So I believe it's unconstitutional that the doctor was on the side working for the prosecution, because I would think that it need to be a middle ground man, someone who's not on either side of, the defense or the prosecution. And the doctor had only interviewed Adams for about 15-20 minutes. But when on the stand at the trial, Dr. James Grigson spoke for about 2 hours about his own personal achievements in his career, and talked about Adams as being Adolf Hitler, comparing him to Hitler and comparing him to Charles Manson, even though Adams had no prior history of a criminal record, had no history of violence, and pretty much was a first-time offender. And to say such things of him, in my opinion, were unconstitutional and inappropriate in the courtroom. And the movie was a lot about how things were handled in the court, and it was very interesting movie, very eye-opening, seeing that it was back in the 70s, late 70s. I'm assuming that it's evolved a lot since then, but like I said, the movie was very interesting, and other than that, I it was a great movie, and thank you for watching my video blog.